Good morning. I'd like to welcome everyone to this, the last regular legislative breakfast, again this year sponsored or hosted by Vermont's North Country Chamber of Commerce. And in behalf of the Chamber of Commerce, as well as NVDA, because NVDA through Karen Garrity, the Economic Development Specialist, is the one that is training Dan Cullerin to make sure that everything runs smoothly. And they are the folks who actually organize the breakfast and make them the success that they've been for 30 or 40 years. We have to rely on Senator Starr to tell us how long these breakfasts have been going. In any event. Yes. In any event, thanks to Dan and Karen for organizing the breakfast and making it happen. This year has been the case, as has been the case for many years now. The Eastside Restaurant has very graciously provided a breakfast for the nominal cost of $5. Obviously, this is a public event, and the East Side, I'm sure, is not making any money on this breakfast. But please, if you partake of the breakfast, make sure you leave $5 in the basket at the end of the table. This morning, again, Terry DeFazio is videotaping the proceedings for later broadcast on Channel 15, the local PEG access station. And as long as things haven't changed, the breakfast will be broadcast tonight at 8 p.m. as well as on Wednesday at 9 a.m. And in addition, we're always pleased to have the print media represented by Chris Roy from the Newport Daily Express, and also from Robin Smith from the Orleans County Record. At each of our breakfasts, our regular breakfasts, we have one Vermont State Senator and two Vermont State Representatives as our special guests. And at the breakfast, we call upon our legislators to give us a 10 to 15 minute overview of what is going on in the legislature this year. After they have finished the presentation, we then open the floor to questions and comments from you, the citizens of Orleans County. And if your question or comment is directed to just one of the featured legislators, please let us know. Otherwise, we'll call upon each of the legislators to respond to your comments. We're always pleasantly surprised when we have other members of the legislature in attendance, and this morning I note that Representative Woodman Page is present, and we thank you for taking the time to be scheduled to be present. However, all questions and comments should be directed to the three featured legislators. If we ever get to the point where we run out of questions and comments and responses from the featured legislators and you, the citizens of Orleans County, then we would call upon Representative Page to fill in the time slot. Again, this morning we're pleased to have as our special guest Senator Bobby Starr and Representatives Brian Smith and Vicki Strong. Senator Starr serves as chair of the Senate Committee on Agriculture and also as a member of the Senate Committee on Appropriations. Bobby, what's happening in the Senate this year?
Well, there's a whole lot of things happening. They haven't happened yet, that's all. We have about, I'd say, possibly 3 weeks left in the total legislative session. Then we'll really know what's happening. I would say, Bill, must be we've been having these breakfasts for 35 years, I would guess, if I had to guess. And last breakfast, I was supposed to be here, but I had to be away. And John Rogers Senator Rogers took my place. And so I'm taking his place today, so he can be home working on his hemp plants. But so it all worked out well. I should report that being on the chair of the Ag Committee, it's a challenging time for agriculture because the bulk of our ag is dairy, and dairy's having a pretty rough time. But all the bills that we had in committee in regards to ag has been voted out and gone to the House, and their bills have come over to us. So everything's in play, and that's all working real smooth with the House Ag Committee. So I would think that we're going to have some positive things coming out in general to help ag. One thing we have done is we sent joint letters to the federal food and drug people in regards to milk. There's almond milk and soy milk, and well, that really isn't milk. And so we've sent letters to them trying to get them to make the definition of milk from lactating animals, and that's gone, and we haven't heard back yet, but probably never will. But we're trying. The Milk Commission met a lot during the fall, and we did have a big meeting at J that probably most of you read about, the Dairy Summit. Some good ideas came out of that we're working with other states on. And in the Ag Appropriations Bill that's over in my Appropriations Committee, a few things that might interest you folks that we kind of approved in there, but it hasn't officially been voted on. In regards to ag, the fair stipend fund that we give money each year to all the fairs around the county fairs like Bowers, Orleans County. We've approved that stipend fund of $110,000. The 2+2 educational program where young people can apply and go to VTC for 2 years, UVM for 2 years. We've approved that budget and added $152,000 to that so that those young people, they get their tuition in their books for free. They have to maintain a 3.0 average, and they're really good students. And most of these students come from the rural areas of Vermont, and a lot of them come from farm families. So that's a good thing. Farm to Plate, which helps schools with their hot lunch program. We've put $135,000 into that. And Farm to School, which is another one of these programs, $176,000. And by the looks in the room, none of you have children that go to hot lunch, but you may have grandchildren that go. And what we have is it's a universal meals program, and that was established in the U.S. Department of Ag's budget. And if you qualify and have more than 50% of your children below a certain income level, the entire delegation or the student body eats lunch for free. And I've fooled with this for quite a few years, and up here in the North Country, I think every one of our schools now has universal meals program within their school district, and it really works quite well, and this money comes out of the U.S. Department of Ag's federal budget that pays for these meals. So it saves the children from being separated out of, if they had no money. They all get good meals, and the school gets a check to pay for the meals. And it's just, it runs a lot smoother, kids eat a lot better, and everybody wins from the situation. And we're trying to spread that. I think we have like 90-some schools in the state now that do universal meals, and this will bump that number up considerably and be better for all. In the Working Lands program, we have people that apply and get grants for that. We've basically said $594,000 for that, and the House added some money to this, and hopefully we'll keep that going. And the local foods grant's a small grant, and that's only $30,000. We, getting on to the other issue of hemp, we passed that, and that's all going quite well. We've got like 300 different farm or landowners that have applied for permits to grow hemp. And to do that legally, we had to set up a system where the Department of Agriculture had a program in place for testing and monitoring and even site visits for inspection of the hemp. And I don't know if you do know, but we have a brand new ag and environmental lab that just opened in Randolph Center at the college. And that's up and running, and the hemp program, the testing and all that's going to be done within that lab there at VTC. The S-160, I think that's the Ag Economic Development Bill that we spent a lot of time on in the Senate putting that together, and that's over in the House now, and I think Vicki will probably, I've heard they've torn it all apart, that we didn't do a very good job, and I think Vicki knows that the Congress Committee, that may all change again. But it's a bill that does a lot of things for quite a few agricultural groups, and so I'll let Vicki talk on that, but for a couple of things, it has a carbon offset provision built into the bill to help forest owners that are, their trees are putting out a lot of carbon, and it would help and give them a little money in return for that. 205 is a bill we got from the House that bans the sale of neonics in the local stores. We've been having a lot of bumblebee problems. disease, and they're dying off. And the scientists and people that deal with bumblebees think it's the neonics that's causing some of this. And so the way the bill's set up now, only licensed applicators would be able to use that and spray with that. And we talked a lot about, we've had a lot of discussion about treated neonic seeds. And we've taken some testimony on that, but if you, it's a mixed bag of, if you do away with them, then you have other problems. And if you can't use no-till corn planters if you don't use neonic seeds. So then that means you have to plow and harrow, and then you get runoff from your dirt instead of planting your seeds in sod. And so I don't think that's going to be added to the bill this year, but there will be more tests given to study that further into the future. We're working on putting more money into in the Pope's bill, into early child care. Those parents that work, one of the spouses basically works for very little money once they pay their child care. So we're working to raise the reimbursements for especially the lower income people, to try to get that up so that it's more fair and even. And there's in nursing homes, we're trying to put more money there. And the problem is that if you go to an assisted living type of place, you pay your own way. And what has happened, or what is happening, and it has happened, is they've had to raise the private care so high that people that are paying their own way run out of money. And so you ask the question, well, why are they running out of money? And the reason is the people on Medicaid haven't been getting any extra money for years, so they had to raise the private pay people to cover the cost of keeping those folks. And it's really compounding the problem for folks in these level 3 assisted living homes. So we're working on trying to get money for them. And the other issue is people that do live in assisted living and in nursing homes, they haven't gotten they have a personal allowance amount, and they haven't had a raise since 1998 or something like that to pay for all their personal needs. And so we're trying to put more money into that to help those folks. And the real problem that we have is back in the early 90s, the state set up a system to pay for for retirement for teachers and their health insurance. And what happened is, I call them the smart people. They told the legislators, and even the governors got mixed up in it, that the investments that they were making with this initial money, and the money that came in each year from the employees would keep up with their retirement payouts. Well, it wasn't quite accurate, and like last year we had to put about $42 million that we were going to use for, you know, to help people and things. We had to put that into the kitty to keep that, just keep it alive. Well, this year, that's climbed to 140 million. And even though you folks, we've all paid money in and the budget is good, we got to take any extra money and pay that. So it's really making things kind of unpleasant when you try to figure out where all the money's going to go, and you've got this one deep hole that's taking 140 million of those dollars. But I'm sure you know, we'll get it figured out somehow, and so that's what's happening in the Appropriations Committee, and I think at our next breakfast we should have that. We should be home, and we'll be able to tell you more. So with that, I think I'll pass on. Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby. And now from the House side of the Vermont Legislature, I'd like to welcome Representative Vicki Starr. Vicki this year serves as a member of the House Committee on Agriculture and Forestry. Vicki?
Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you. I missed all the other breakfasts. I thought for sure you'd cancel a few times, Bill, and you never seem to. There were some pretty big snowstorms on Mondays, so it's a pleasure to be with you on a sunny, although cool day, and it really does feel like spring. So thank you, Bill and Karen, and those who helped sponsor this breakfast. An opportunity for us to get a glimpse of what's happening in some of the committees and in the bigger picture in Montpelier in the State House, and a good chance for us as community members to have a voice. And that's what I love about serving in our Vermont legislature, that I, as your representative, excuse me, if you're in my district, I represent 7 towns: Albany, Barton, Craftsbury, Glover, Greensboro, Wheelock, and Sheffield. Was that 7? Who's count? But for me, it's a privilege to serve each of those communities, and they're each different and have different types of businesses and folks who live there. So it's a challenge to represent them all, but I do my best with my voice there when I'm working hard and voting. So I have been privileged to be in a new committee this session. I asked to be put on this committee. The others that I've been on, General Housing and Military Affairs, Judiciary, and Healthcare, had a lot of political types of topics that often gave me heartburn and ulcers. And the Ag Committee, my chairwoman, I should say, actually says, please leave your politics outside the door. And we're working together on behalf of farmers and ag and forestry in our state to make it better. And she's a great chairwoman, I believe, and we've taken a lot of testimony on a various number of farming practices and types of farming. As Bobby said, our dairy farms are really in crisis. The milk prices worldwide, it's a global issue, are making it very hard for our dairy farmers to stay going. So we've seen a decline in dairy farms all over the state. And folks come to Vermont to see these beautiful farms. And if we're losing them at such an alarming rate, we're really going to be struggling to figure out what's the future of Vermont. It's the backbone of our economy and our beauty. And also for things like soil and water and air quality. So as of right now, we have about 700 dairy farms, although 6,000 diverse types of other farms, including vegetable farms and poultry and hemp, all these new things that are coming up, a lot of entrepreneurial types of ventures going on in Vermont, which is great. But really, we want to keep, excuse me, our dairy farmers going. And one thing I think that is a positive note for the dairy industry is that for so long it seems they've been targeted as the polluters of the state with their fertilizers, glyphosates, and all those kinds of things. And as we see our waterways now showing algae blooms, dairy farmers have been taking a lot of blame for that. And we are seeing that, in fact and in truth, they're working hard to improve their soil and doing it without as much chemicals as they had once done. Their farming practices are changing, and as they're increasing the organic matter in their soils and using less tilling, like Bobby was mentioning, we're seeing the soil health improve, water goes into the soils in a healthier way, and less runoff is happening. So all the way around, it's called regenerative farming, and it's very ingenious practices where you don't hay as low down on the soil, you let it grow taller, you put your cattle and other grazing animals on it, and over time it's building organic matter. So we're all around getting healthier soils, which makes healthier water and healthier air. So that's a really great thing, and farmers are getting help financially for that, to help with some of the very expensive equipment that this new kinds of practices takes, no-tilling and that sort of thing. So this is happening all over the country, but Vermont's keeping up, and we're doing a good job with that. Another issue we've talked about in our committee has to do with wetlands. And I've had quite an education in regards to wetlands. I thought wetlands just breed mosquitoes, and they're a nuisance because you can't do anything with them, and they take up space on your land. But it's really interesting that wetlands has its own ecoculture, and it's a very important part of ways we protect our water quality. That wetlands absorb a lot of this, as some of us have seen the Black River looking flooded really in the last week or two. A lot of the wetlands that are around that river keep that river from overflowing and actually help with water quality. So one of the issues we have around wetlands is that farmers have wetlands, class 1 and class 2, on their land, and in order to do any of their farming efforts, even if it's building a bridge or making a new pathway for their cows to come back and forth to the barn, our wonderful Agency of Natural Resources steps on their land and says, oh, wow, you're going to change that? Well, that's going to make a problem with these wetlands, and oh, by the way, there's a nice $10,000 or more permit involved with that. In fact, there's a little dog park in Shelburne that some folks got together and got a piece of land donated so that they can have a fenced-in area for folks in the area to walk their dogs. And so this person came in and gave testimony, several people actually, that the wetlands are bordering this dog park, and A&R came in and said, oh my goodness, you cut down those brushes, what we would think pucker brush, like blackberries, and now they have to pay $90,000 to get a permit. And that just makes no sense. So we're in there trying to figure out how can they keep their dog park. That's a lot of bake sales to come up with money, excuse me, for that permit. How can they keep the water wetland area in the condition it should be in and still have their dog park? So this is the kind of funny thing of when you have rules and regulations that creates headaches and heartache for us as Vermonters. So we're trying to deal with farming that if they're using their land for crops and for food, that the permit process is not going to be as painful or as expensive in regards to what things they're doing on their farm for wetlands. And then one other, it's funny how we tweak bills. Sometimes, I would say not sometimes, a lot of the time in Montpelier, we get a little too excited about regulating. And next thing you know, there's a lot of pushback or things that aren't really practical. And one is for farmers when they have a whole cow or a pig or a lamb or a sheep they want to slaughter, they're not allowed to literally have multiple owners of that animal to sell. So they're having an on-farm slaughter situation, and in the past they have not been able to have multiple owners when they divide that animal up. So that makes it very difficult for selling the meat, and then for people who want to buy it, they can't buy a whole cow. They don't have the freezer space or the money. So we're working on a bill that's actually allowing on-farm slaughter where multiple owners can purchase an animal and fill their freezer without it being so expensive. Another interesting little side note is, has anyone here compost?
Yes.
I think it's great. I mean, it keeps a lot of extra stuff out of our landfill. So composting is quite popular in Vermont, and a lot of us do it, and particularly poultry farmers. So poultry farmers will bring in, they'll collect compost. I don't know if you've heard of Vermont Compost, Black Dirt Farm. There's multiple different groups that pick up our compost from either hospitals, schools, businesses, and even private owners. Homeowners can donate their compost, and they take it to feed large chicken farms, 300 chickens or more. And the compost actually is very healthy for the chickens, and they use it to improve their soils, and it biodegrades and makes great healthy soil. And they can even sell their soil matter once the chickens are done with it. But now ANR has designated this compost as solid waste instead of an agricultural byproduct. So we're changing the definition of compost and food scraps to a definition that doesn't put it under the jurisdiction of ANR, and it's actually an agricultural product. And that's coming over to Bobby with the Senate and this 160 bill. So we worked a lot on the 160. It's kind of interesting. I enjoyed working with Bobby on the House side of a lot of that agricultural type of topics. And one more thing I'll touch on with hemp. Senator Rogers is busy working on his hemp right now. Hemp is interesting because I thought it was so related to marijuana that hemp was a product that creates the same side effects as marijuana, and that's not the case. But the case is they're very related plants. It's a matter of how long it grows and different types of strains of it, way complicated. But hemp is not an easy plant or an easy crop. It takes a lot of intensive work. You have to harvest it at exactly the right time, or THC does eventually develop in the plant. It has to be less than 0.3 THC to be used in products that we see on the shelves that are rather expensive right now, but CBD oils and all the products that can be done with that. So we are working on making sure that it's tested appropriately. Fees are now going to come into play with different levels of how much you grow. But overall, I think we're going to see a lot of different types of hemp products, very versatile type of plant, whether it's for fiber, medicinal use, chickens eat it, animals can eat it. It's actually a very healthy plant. So it makes us all healthy, including the soil. And just to end with some more bigger picture topics that are happening in the legislature, other than my little ag committee, which I hide out there and enjoy it. But when we come to the House floor, we have to vote on a lot of big topics. Excuse me, family paid leave, minimum wage will be coming out, and then we have had a very tough year in my mind because I'm a Christian and a pro-life legislator about abortion. Already we have unrestricted abortion in Vermont. There's no regulation whatsoever on any abortion clinic in our state. A girl at any age in her life can obtain an abortion at any time for any reason with no parental consent and no counseling. That's the situation in Vermont as it is currently. And no amount of bills or laws or regulation has been allowed to come forward to address some of the problems with that. And on top of that, we have H57 and Proposition 5, which have yet to be voted out completely for final passages, both going through the House and Senate. It's brought hundreds of people into the State House to testify. Almost 75 to 80% of those people are against those bills. They think they're too extreme, and I agree. they're too extreme. Vermont is one of the few states in the country that are going this extreme measure when it comes to the issue of abortion. As we see it, a woman who has a right to an abortion now is just completely unrestricted, and there's so many things we need to talk about that aren't being allowed to be talked about in the House or Senate. So it's a tough issue, it's divisive. You can tell from my voice that I'm passionate about it. I know you all have your thoughts as well. And that has been a really tough issue to talk about in our House and Senate this year. It's worn me out personally. I think it's a shame. So anyway, I hope that in general, we're there to make people's lives better, to improve our economy, and to make Vermont a wonderful, beautiful place to live, to work, and raise your family. And that's why I'm there, hopefully to make a difference in that way. So thank you all for your time, and we'll see you around.
Thank you, Vicki. And just to remind you, I'm a native of Brownington in Senator Smith's district, and never had a snow day. The day that you hear that I participated and supported the cancellation of something because of a little bit of snow is the day that it's time for me to get done. Now I'd like to welcome Representative Brian Smith. Brian serves as a member of the House Committee on Health Care. Brian?
Thanks, Bill. Good morning. Before I try to touch on things that are going on in healthcare, it's my first year in healthcare, I want to go along with what Representative Strong had said about the abortion bill. I signed on to this bill, thought it was a good idea when I first was approached by it, and with a little bit of pressure from Vicki and other legislators, I realized there were no trimesters addressed in this abortion bill. Like Vicki had said, that it's a carte blanche bill for abortion. I pulled my name off it and voted against it, and I don't know where it's going to go from here, but we're going to see, I guess. I don't know if we'll see this year or not. A few other little things that have happened in this session. I had some contact with some folks from my district with some concerns over DCF, Department of Children and Families. For important reasons, there seems to be a lot of miscommunication between Montpelier, DCF, and what's going on around here. There was an incident with a very bad apartment and children living in Newport, and it's a good thing that the landlord took the bull by the horns and did something there. We had a meeting, Representative Page, myself, and Senator Starr had a meeting with Ken Schatz from DCF, and hopefully things have been somewhat addressed, but they still need to have an eye kept on them too. But that being said, we are watching. Non-citizen voting happened in Montpelier. There was a charter change for the city of Montpelier. This probably is going to be the tip of the iceberg, I think. The House overwhelmingly, I think there were 14 that voted no on it, but non-citizens are going to be allowed to vote in Montpelier unless the governor vetoes the bill. And we think we may possibly have enough to sustain. In the Vermont Constitution, it says you need to be a U.S. citizen to vote, or to take your Freeman's oath, for that matter. So that we're keeping an eye on that. The weatherization bill, you haven't seen the word carbon tax come up this year anywhere. I think there's a number of people in Montpelier that didn't want to address it. So instead of a carbon tax, they'd incorporated a fuel tax in the weatherization bill, hoping to create another $8 million for weatherization. There's already, I believe, probably 20 or $20 million in weatherization. This is going to add 2.5 to 5 cents a gallon for heating fuel, coal, propane. It did not address gasoline, but that, I don't know what's going to become of that. I think it's not done yet. They're still discussing it, but those are just some things that I did want to touch on. S86 was a 21-year-old smoking and vaping, they're going to make it, you're going to be 21 to buy either one of those products. The Representative Helm from, was he Fairhaven, Vicki? From Fairhaven had an amendment to this allowing GIs to be able to purchase cigarettes. And that amendment didn't go over very well with the full House. And I think 21-year-olds are, if you're going to buy booze when you're 21, I think cigarettes are okay too. I don't think cigarettes are probably worse than beer, but that's enough of that. But there's a few health bills. S73 is a bill that's addressing ambulatory surgical centers. There's one that's trying to be built right now in central Vermont. They're a for-profit medical center. And right now our committee has been working for quite a bit of time on this, trying to figure out how to set up fees and set up regulation. It's going to be overseen by the Green Mountain Care Board. What this is going to create, these ASCs are going to create a quicker outpatient surgery. It's one day, it's in and out. I got a feeling you're going to see more of them coming aboard as time goes on. S31 is probably the simplest of all of these bills that we've been looking at in healthcare. It's a two-page bill that very clearly addresses healthcare prices, financial assistance to anyone that might need it, and billing and collecting procedures. We're trying to keep this bill as simple as we can. There's a member that has added an amendment to it, turning a very simple, explainable bill into a complicated one. And that seems to be the procedure of making bills in Montpelier. But this bill, I believe the chair is supportive, the chair of healthcare is supportive of keeping this bill as simple as it can be. Because, you know, if you go in and talk about a bill with a hospital, they're going to throw something at you in every different direction. You don't know how much you're going to pay when you're done, but this bill will clarify it. One of the big bills is H524. It addresses pay systems. We're not very much in favor of a single pay system in our committee. And this bill addressed fines for people that did not have insurance. I opposed it. They were talking in the lines of a family of four that make $50,000 a year or less of having to come up with approximately a $2,000 fine. That mandate, the mandate is still in the bill, but there will be no fines. It went to Ways and Means with the support of healthcare, which I didn't support. It went to Ways and Means and they didn't agree with it either, so there are no fines. People can't afford insurance. They're not going to have to pay a fine for it. So right now we've got 48 bills or 50 bills on our wall that probably are going to go nowhere, and I think we sent 4 out of committee this year, and things are moving awfully slow. I guess that's what they're supposed to be. H446 is a bill to address rural health in the area. Let me see if I can read my writing. We've proposed a rural health commission to ensure that the system is sustainable and affordable for everyone. That hasn't gone very far yet, but it's still in discussion. And on the last note that I've got here, when I first spoke, when we started our legislative breakfast, H165 is a texting and driving bill that I feel very strong about. I testified in transportation on it, and I proposed to up the fines to $500 and 5 points on a license. You watch television today, you see a lot of texting and driving concerns by the public safety, and the Transportation Department, Transportation Committee, heard testimony from myself and Lieutenant Flanagan from the State Police. Lieutenant Flanagan had indicated that this was not going to be a good bill, that he thought the fine was too much, it's going to be hard to enforce, but there were 3,600 cases last year of texting and driving. I don't know what the accident results were, but the committee agreed with the lieutenant. And I got to thinking about it. I'll bring it up again next year, but it's my understanding and my opinion that the state police are the enforcers. And people like Vicki and all the legislators in this room are the lawmakers, not the state police. They're supposed to enforce what we decide is a good law. So that's something that I really want to keep working on. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to call me home. If you're not in my district, I don't care. So thank you.
Thank you, Brian. That brings us to the point in the program where we open the floor to questions and comments from you, citizens of Orleans County. As indicated, if your question or comment is directed to all three of the legislators, you need not say anything. However, if the question or comment is directed just to one of the legislators, please let us know. Also, please make sure that you stand in the approximate location of this X when it's your turn to speak. And as those of you who were here last week know, we often run out of time when people are still lined up to speak. So if you wish to speak, please stand in the general area where Janine is now standing. And when it's your turn, we'll call you forward. And please identify yourself by name and tell us where you reside. Janine.
Thank you, Bill. Janine Young, Craftsbury Common. Thank you, Brian and Vicki, for bringing up the abortion issue. It's something that has been near and dear to my heart for many years. They claim it's a woman's right, but let's look at the rights of the baby. The baby's heartbeat starts beating within, 14, 20 days. It's a separate person. It does not have the mother's DNA. So I want you to work hard to prevent the PR5 from becoming law, although it will have to go through another legislative session and a vote. But people have to understand what's really going on. And if you haven't seen the movie Unplanned, you have to see it because it tells you the truth about what the abortion industry is. People think that young girls should have the right to go have an abortion anytime they want without parental consent. Yet we're going to pass bills you have to be 21 to smoke a cigarette. You've got to understand what it is. It's a money-making industry, and it doesn't help the girls, it doesn't help the women. And if you want to expand on that, I'd appreciate it, but if you haven't seen the movie Gosnell or the movie Unplanned, they shouldn't be voting on any of these bills until they know what's really going on.
Senator Starr.
I really don't know if Janine had a question or if that was a statement. But
Expand on your thoughts.
I believe that abortion's a family issue, and it should be dealt with between the mother, the father, and their physician. And it really shouldn't be a subject that we in the legislature deal with, vote on. So I don't know how else to explain that, but I don't think any of our legislators up here support the bill as it's been presented. Now, there's two issues down there on abortion. There's, I think, H57 opens it up so that, it's wide open. The other bill is a bill that would, it's a woman's freedom and rights constitutional amendment proposition. And that one just gives everyone a right in the state to vote on this thing. And if that could pass, it might put this thing to rest, because it keeps cropping up. I mean, it'll go 3 or 4 years, and you won't hear much from it. Everything's kind of going along peacefully. But then you get a year like this, and it's floated right to the top again. And it's a very emotional issue, and I just think and feel strongly that it belongs with the family and not with the legislature.
Thank you. Representative Strong.
Janine, thank you for your comments, and I know you've been to the State House on this issue numerous times. I thank you for taking the time to come down. One thing that I'd like to back up on, when you think about culture in general, the family, the value of children, I feel like that the family's been under attack, and the value, the deepest value of our children is a gift. And if we shift our mindset to really see children as a gift, then every life can live in the womb and have a purpose and have a home. And I think we need to work on the level of support for young women who might find themselves in a pregnancy that they weren't planning on, or maybe puts their life at risk in some way, that they have the support and resources they need to help them through that crisis. So as a culture, I think we need to not just focus on abortion, but on the value of human life, the value of children, and ways to help our society, help our young women who are struggling and maybe in a situation that's very hard for them. So we'll see. I have hope for our culture and our state, and I think that in the end we'll see some good steps forward. Thank you.
Representative Smith.
I consider myself pro-choice. It's not up to me to tell a woman what she can do or what she can't do with herself. And I don't think it's up to 150 lawmakers to make that decision either. However, I think that trimesters do have to be addressed. First, second trimester, whether it just be addressed in the form of medical advice or something, but I don't think it's up to me to make that decision for a woman that has to make a decision for herself. Thank you.
Next.
I think it, finally next here. Hi, I'm Mary Brenner out of the Westfield, Vermont. And I just have a real quick question, follow up on something from way back. Right to repair. Any motion on that, anything happening on it? I just noticed that more and more we're getting shoddy materials when we buy things, and we can't repair them because we can't take them apart and there are no parts, or the parts are plastic and made anywhere else. I've had a faucet I had to replace after only 7 months. That's a faucet. What about the cars? What about the, what do you call those little funny gadgets that people carry around? PDAs or whatever. We talked about it at one time because it was hitting the farmers. The farmers were finding that the manufacturers of the large farm equipment were requiring that only their technicians could repair the equipment. I thought this was an issue at one point. I wonder if there's anything happening.
Senator Starr.
Well, maybe we just dropped it. I mean, that's fine.
Well, I'm not going to knock you down here. You can get to the podium. The right to repair bill, I mean, it's in, we're passing that. And that came about really people with automobiles with their, everything's computerized, that they, like Ford Motor Company or General Motors, were refusing to send out documents to the little garages to be able to, so you couldn't take your car to your local guy not your local dealer, but to your local friend that's always worked on your cars. And I thought, and I'll have to check this, Mary, but I thought we passed that. Farm machinery, I mean, this has been dealt with quite a while ago, I thought, but I'll double check. John Deere was great at holding back information so you couldn't get your John Deere tractor fixed. And they've come out with these no-till planters now that are very sensitive and complicated. They've come out with a manure spreading apparatus that's run by GPS, and you have a GPS in your tractor, and you're going down the field, and you do all these soil tests for clean water, and there's no need of putting fertilizer where you don't need it. And from that satellite, it'll tell that spreader when to start up, slow down, stop putting any on. And I mean, it's really getting so that farmers need to have a person on hand within their farming operation to keep all this stuff organized, and they need these documents to be able to adjust and to keep all that stuff running. But I'll double check, but I think that's already where if they sell that equipment in Vermont, they have to release the documentation.
Representative Strong.
Not sure if I have anything to add, but Mary, thank you for your question. And it was a bill, and I know we took it up in the House. And many times I think just because a bill passed the House means it's law, and it gets stalled in the Senate or something. But to my knowledge, I know it passed the House, and that was actually, I think, a year ago. So with Bobby's little green light on that one, I think we're good to go, I hope. But it's funny, I just had a conversation with someone on the phone yesterday telling me about the old days when you would repair the little appliances you had around your house, and anything from a coffee pot to your dishwasher. And more we live in a complex society where when something goes on the blink, we're in trouble because I don't have the expertise to fix all the digital things that are happening in our lives. But overall, I think as Vermonters, we don't want to see our landfills filled with all these appliances and gadgets, and want to do our best to keep them going and fix them. So that's the sentiment I've heard in the House, and that's about all I can share about that bill, but I'm pretty sure they passed. It passed.
Representative Smith.
I don't have anything to add to that. You got two good answers right here. So.
Thank you. Next question or comment?
Can I make a comment?
Certainly.
This is a comment, and I don't have to have any answer to it, but I'm talking about the pro-choice, pro-life. I believe that that is a family decision. I also think that anyone who is not a strong supporter of Planned Parenthood is really the statistics are something like there are, out of 1,000 pregnancies in the U.S., 58 are teenagers. Finland has 7 per 1,000. What do you think they promote? I think we need to promote Planned Parenthood. I also think all of the pro-life people need to be thinking about adopting or having foster children in their home, because those lives are important too. Thank you.
Please identify yourself.
Oh yeah, you want me to identify myself? Patricia Cooper, Brownington, Vermont. And I have an adopted daughter.
Yes.
I'm Ernest Charquette from Newport Center, and I wasn't going to speak, but there's so many issues that came up on abortion that I guess I've got to speak. The question that we're facing is not pro-choice, because a woman has the right to have sex or not. The issue that we're facing today is responsibility. responsible for your actions.
What about the male in this?
And the male is the same way. If we're going to take an action and have sex, then take the responsibility. That's what the issue is. It is not a health issue, because they've been proven time and time again that it's safer to have a child than to have an abortion. And it's safer to have to be operated on and what do you call that?
Cesarean.
It's cesarean. It's safer to have a cesarean than to have an abortion. So it's not a health issue. People who are trying to promote this are covering and using choice and health. And it's neither one. Because you have a choice. You don't get pregnant because, like catching a cold. You have to take physical action to get pregnant. You have to lay it down. You have to, well, I'm not going to discuss it. So this is what I'm trying to say. It is that killing babies will never justify your option. And you can present it any way you want to. And I listen to you, but hopefully you will listen to me.
And let me just remind folks that the purpose of this breakfast is to focus on issues that are facing the Vermont legislature. And certainly, as far as the abortion is concerned, that is currently an issue, but I think it's easy to get beyond the scope of the legislature. Next question or comment? Yes.
I have a question for the guys.
Okay, please identify yourself.
Louise Charquette and Newport Center. I have a question for the guys on the dairy program. I see you concentrate about all rules and regulations to save the land and all that. Well, isn't there a way you could figure out a way so the farmers get a better price for their milk? This is what's creating the problem. You seem to put more pressure on farmers to save the land and all rules and regulations on having better farming, but you're drowning them out of the state to just because the price of milk is the same thing as what it was 20 or 30 years ago. How they can't survive on more rules and regulation and not get a decent price for their milk. Is there a way you could try to put pressure on the co-ops or something to figure out how come then why they can't get more money in the farmers' hands, and because the co-ops are still surviving, so why they seem to be able to pay their bills. So it seems if you should concentrate on the balancing of the money that the farmers get, so they could get more. Study that.
Senator Starr.
Thank you, Louise, for the question. The pricing of milk is quite complicated. It's not very complicated, but it's quite complicated. And I've fooled with this, as most of you know, for years. And I and other legislators did put together a pricing mechanism, and some of you will remember it was called the Northeast Dairy Compact Pricing Formula. And we had more farms then. Every New England state had more farms then. It took me about 8 years to put that together. Not full-time, but I spent summers, falls, springs, winters, all my free time I was fooling with that. And it It worked well. It was set up with a 5-year sunset, and at the end of 5 years, or during that 5-year period, it generated about $150 million out of the marketplace, but our price, us as consumers, didn't go up, but it divided the money up in a more fair manner. So the farmer got a fair price, the processor, the bottler got a fair price, and the consumer everybody got used right. But the big guys, the Kraft Foods of the world, and the companies that buy a lot of dairy product were very upset that they didn't have control over pricing that product, that it was left up to the compact board. And when we went back to Washington, because all this has to get approved there, they have to raise money every day down there. To be a congressman or a senator, you have fundraisers every day. and we, the little guys that were promoting this, didn't have the $5,000 to go and sit there for a fundraiser and pay. And when we got ready to vote, we had 54 votes, but you have to have 60 to get something to pass down there in the Senate. So even though we had a majority vote, a positive vote, we lost. And we worked this last year a lot off season, not legislative season, but off season, to put together a supply and demand system so that the co-ops could institute their own supply demand. DFA, Dairy Farmers of America, which controls 25 to 28% of the milk across the entire country, has some supply-demand programs set up in different parts of the country. And so we wanted them to do that here in the Northeast. And it seemed to be, they're really smooth, these people. I mean, they're smooth. And it seemed like they were coming along, but then they voted it down back here maybe a month ago. They voted not to pursue that. And I don't know if you folks know, but I've been told that they're in the process of taking over St. Albans Co-op, or St. Albans is going to join them. But I know who's going to win in that whole deal. It's going to be DFA. So we're only going to have 2 buyers for milk here in the Northeast. It's going to be Agrimark and DFA in the future. So the pricing should be changed. It shouldn't be dealt with in Washington. And we should have 5 regions in this country where the pricing should be set. But that crew in D.C., I wouldn't bet a nickel on any of them. Because, they like to talk about things that don't amount to anything. And I really question whether they help us, or we might be better off without them some days. And that's pretty sad, but that's the way I see it.
We have about 2.5 minutes to be split between Representative Strong and Representative Smith. So Representative Strong?
I feel like Bobby really did a good job on that, so if anyone has another quick question.
Representative Smith.
I think Senator Starr knows his milk business, so I'd go along with whatever he decides on it. I'd like to just add one thing.
Why don't you come up here? Bob?
Okay. I don't know if there really is an answer to milk pricing, but in 1974, my grandfather sold his farm, and I think he was getting just about in you mentioned how many years it had been. I think he was probably getting $14 to $15 a hundred then, and I don't know what it is now, but I don't think it's much more than that if it is any. So they've been working on it for 50 years so far. That's all I wanted to add.
Thank you. That brings us to the conclusion of this morning's legislative breakfast. I'd like to thank Senator Starr and Representative Strong and Smith and the East Side Restaurant and members of the press. Our last legislative breakfast of this year will be held here on May 20th, at which time we'll have a general discussion featuring all of our local legislators. Each legislator would be allowed to spend up to 5 minutes telling us what's happened in the legislature, and as we know, 5 minutes doesn't allow for much in-depth discussion, but we need to keep it limited in order to allow any time for questions and comments. And thank you all for attending.
Thank you. There you go.